Welcome back, 7 past the hour. This hour is being sponsored, and I think Chelik sponsored last night too. Chelik Kailar. And this is about the 99percentmovie.com. Chelik writes, United States has just faced the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. So what happens when a growing economic inequality in America bears heavily on its people? A new 20-minute short film directed by Chelik Kailar features Noam Chomsky in his first non-documentary film. The Occupy movement looms large as the backdrop of the film and the struggle for economic justice. You can see it for free at this website, the 99, the numeral, percentmovie.com. The 99percentmovie.com, all written out except 99. The 99percentmovie.com. Check it out, okay? Thanks, Chelik. Had a call during the commercial. Somebody wanted to know what I was talking about last night, the Elie Wiesel book, that the one that for various reasons, not the least of which identifying with what the writer, the author, said. But the title of that book was Night. And the other book that I read that pretty much sealed my fate as far as being an atheist was the book titled Treblinka. Now, if you do a search, you'll find there are several books about Treblinka. And the person asked me asked Kathy off the air, which one? I don't remember. All I remember in the title, because I read it so long ago, 40 years ago or longer, the only thing that I remember was the title Treblinka. Which was the name of the death camp. But Elie Wiesel, writing in his first book, Night, there's a passage here that arguably is the most powerful and renowned passage in Holocaust literature. And I don't say that. Critics have said that. Let me just read this very short passage to you. And this is the part that stuck with me from that book all these years. And Elie Wiesel was, I think, 15 when he saw what he wrote about. He wrote this. Night was published in the late 50s, but this is what he wrote. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in the camp, which has turned my life into one long night, 7 times cursed and 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the little faces of the children, whose bodies I saw turned into wreaths of smoke beneath the silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget that nocturnal silence which deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God and my soul, and turned my dreams to dust. Never shall I forget these things, even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself. Never. Now that's very powerful and soul-bearing writing. And I've said it before on this program. It was finding out, and I think I was in my late teens, early 20s, when I started to find out about the Holocaust. Now, I like most kids growing up in the 50s and 60s, I saw my share of World War II war movies, John Wayne and John Payne and all those good guys, fighting the Germans and fighting the Japanese and doing this and doing that. But, and the ones, the war in Europe, was so strange for me to see the movies about the war in Europe because it was difficult to propagandize other white people. It was not so hard to characterize or turn into cartoons non-white people. So I can remember as a kid being very uncomfortable going to the movies to see a war movie where it was Americans fighting the Germans. It just didn't seem to make sense to me. White people fighting white people. Remember, I was brought up in a very racist society. A very racist time, very racist culture. And as a result of that, was completely caught into that culture. Took a long time to even come to terms with it. But I had never seen anything or heard anything about the Holocaust. As a matter of fact, I never heard anything about the Middle Passage, what happened to Africans who were brought to this country and how many were killed, bodies thrown into the ocean, millions. Never heard anything about the decimation of the Native American population here. I mean, you don't. I grew up at a time when every single person in this country was being propagandized to a degree that was just astonishing. I mean, once they pumped that stuff in repeatedly by your school, by your church, by your parents, by your relatives, by your social contacts. It's just pumped into you and pumped into you and pumped into you, the mythology. And the reality is left, kicked aside. But anyway, when I read that passage by Elie Wiesel the first time, it was just like a thunderbolt. What does he mean? What? He was one of God's chosen people, according to everything I'd been taught. Now, the Jews had turned away from the Messiah, so they were all condemned now. But at one time, he had been one. What? What did he say? What is it? Let me read that again and again and again and again. And it, to the degree that I am not Jewish, to a degree that I am not a death camp survivor, to the degree that I do not have relatives who survived the Holocaust, I was still able to sense and understand what he was saying, because it occurred to me that even having read the Bible with my grandmother, the Old Testament, about the God of the Hebrews, who just slaughtered thousands of people, and would cackle and rub his hands together and snort when he did it. Even back then I thought, this is not nice. I was a little kid. How can my grandma worship this kind of violence? I can remember thinking that. We killed everybody. Nobody was allowed to survive. When God got pissed off, he killed them all. All of them. Scorched the earth. Where do you think that term comes from? Scorched earth policy. Where do you think that comes from? So, that percolated inside me for about 10 years and 15 years. And then I read Night. And then I started to read as much as I could about the Holocaust and about these death camp? Because I can remember when I was a kid, my grandparents and parents using the term concentration camp. And when I first heard it, I thought that was a place where they sent you to think. Concentrate. And my grandparents would never explain it to me. So I just heard it kind of, concentration camp. What does that mean? Is that like a summer camp? And then when the word was changed from concentration camp to death camp, I mean, that was difficult to, for a non-Jew American to deal with. Death camp? What? People were and these are God's chosen people? 6 million children? What? So I had a pretty clear choice. Either go insane from coming to the realization that the Abrahamic God, even though I didn't call this creature that back then, was either the most vicious, evil force ever unleashed in the universe, or recognize that the whole God story was mythology and creepy and weird and no different from Jupiter or Zeus or any other man-created deity to use to torment and torture people. So, just in case, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the guy called in and wanted to know what the name of the book was. Okay, sorry, it's not church night. We'll be right back. Ay, 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 ay.
Forgotten, look away. Look away. Dixieland, the rains were calling, families lost, people calling. Look away, look away, look away.